everybody. Kal, Aaj aur Kal is the theme of Odyssey, to learn from past experiences, to put in practice in the present, and plan for the future. A warm welcome to our esteemed panelists, distinguished guests, and all of you. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to this exclusive series of Odyssey, Kal, Aaj aur Kal. The theme being investment options for retail investors, traditional investment options versus new age investment options, organized by the IMC's Young Leaders Forum. Investors today show an unprecedented degree of financial prudence and have a variety of investment options to choose from. Today, we have amongst us a panel of experts who are renowned entrepreneurs to advise and guide us. They will highlight equity, fixed income, crypto, and startup investment opportunities, which will be most beneficial for retail investors. I would like to welcome all the esteemed speakers. Mrs. Aditi Kothari Desai, Director, DSP Investment Managers. Mr. Sandeep Ved, Co-founder, Multipie. Mr. Siddharth Shogani, CEO, Probaco. Mr. Pranav Mahajani, President, Trika. And Mr. Abhishek Murarka, VP, Community, Multipie. The IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry has a rich legacy spanning well over 113 years. The IMC has a large membership base, including over 150 trade associations, and reaches out to over 4 lakh business establishments, covering diverse areas of economic activity. The YLF platform encourages young entrepreneurs, professionals, and students and empowers them in their business journey. I am sure this discussion will empower your investment decisions. Now, I will hand over the seminar to Abhishek Murarka, who will be moderating today's session. Abhishek is VP of Community at Multipie, the social network for the investment community in India. Abhishek is a chartered accountant and an MBA from IIM Lucknow and has a vast experience in banking. He has nearly 44,000 followers on Twitter who eagerly await his tweets and advice on investing. Over to you, Abhishek.
Yeah, thank you, Vidhi, and thank you to everyone for joining on a Saturday morning. So I was thinking the topic today we have is very interesting, which is Kal, Aaj or Kal, with a focus on investments. And personally, I think this space has seen a lot of evolution. Like I clearly remember the previous generation would only invest in fixed deposits and maybe in land holdings, would consider equity to be a completely risky asset class. From that, we have come to a times when equity culture is growing very fast, and we have some very exciting new opportunities on the entire cryptocurrency and the startup ecosystem. So we have a very strong panel today, expert from each of these asset classes. I will take the pleasure to introduce the members. So on equity, we have Ms. Aditi Kothari Desai. Aditi is a director of DSP Investment Managers. She is an alumnus of Wharton and Harvard Business School, has over 20 years of experience across investment banking and fund management. And it will be a pleasure to learn from Aditi on how she sees equity as an investment class, how should one think of risk. On the fixed income, we have Mr. Sandeep Beth. Mr. Sandeep is a founder of Multipie.co. Multipie is an exciting new age venture which is building a startup for the entire investment ecosystem. So Sandeep is an alumnus of IIM Calcutta, has over 20 years of experience across fixed income and equity. We have Mr. Siddharth Solangi, who is a founder of Mr. Crebago. Crebago is a very interesting startup which is into audit of new crypto coins, crypto exchanges. And on the entire growing space of startups, we have Mr. Pranav Mahajani. He's a president of Trika. There is some very exciting developments happening in this space. So the flow we'll be having is we will have a round of introduction to every asset class from each of the panel members. The order in which we'll go is equity, starting with Aditi, followed by fixed income, followed by Siddharth on crypto, followed by Pranav on startup. So Aditi, over to you. Would love to hear from you on equities.
Hi, Abhishek, and hello to everyone. Where equities are concerned, really, it is an asset class that everyone should invest in, especially when they're young. It is not without risks, let me tell you. I've been doing this for myself personally about 20 years. There's enough that I have learned and enough mistakes that I've made that I feel you all should not. One is, of course, I feel I should have started way earlier. Two, I feel that, when the market goes down, no need to panic. Better to invest more. So keep some in debt funds also, in addition to equity mutual funds. And I'm, by the way, only talking about equity mutual funds. I'm not talking about direct stock market because I don't invest directly in the market. I'm not allowed to. And all my investments are in DSP because I work at DSP. And that is the rule that we have. It's called skin in the game. If I'm, gonna say mutual funds to everyone, I should be also investing only in mutual funds and it should only be in DSP. So those are all my disclaimers. But I also learned that when the market goes down a lot, you just have to have patience. Make sure that you have some in debt mutual funds in addition to into equity mutual funds. And I think Sandeep will take you through more about debt and fixed income investments. And then when the market goes down, it's good to keep moving things into equity mutual funds. I also try not to invest lump sum, which is one time altogether. I try to stagger my investments through STPs. So I put money in a liquid fund or arbitrage fund or a savings fund, and then slowly every month, a certain amount gets invested. And that has really helped me to not be too scared that, oh my God, if the market falls more and I invest at a high, will that be an issue? It won't be an issue. So these are the different, I would say, different ways to invest. I also feel that if you're going to invest in the equity market, you just have to invest for 10 years and over. In the middle, you could make a lot of money also. But the fact is that if you make a lot of money in the middle and you get out, what will you do with that money? Where will you invest it again? So there's what is called reinvestment risk. It's better you remain in the market, let the money compound. Compound means when your money makes money and then that money again makes more money. It is actually, it is not linear and it's not that easy for the mind to understand. But the longer that you stay in the market, the more money you can make over time on average. So I think with that, Abhishek, can you show that slide
Sure.
I have on the market?
Sure.
So everyone gets really nervous and scared. If we can make this larger, please. Can we do it full screen?
Yeah. It's full screen now, Aditi.
Yeah. So this is actually the journey of the Sensex. The Sensex started in 1980. If you all can see that, it's had many ups and downs. Do you see where, the Harshad Mehta scandal was? If you all just see that, can you all see it in the blue that we have up there? A whole, movie was made in there and the market went up and down. And of course, at that point, people thought lots of fortunes were lost and there was, a lot of panic in the market. But if you look at and you zoom out, if I zoom in, it looks like really big. If I zoom out and you remained in the market, no matter what, and this means a diversified fund. Huh? What does the market mean? It means 30 stocks of the largest companies in India. If I remained in that, my journey was going to take me all the way up to what has happened in COVID. Along the journey, you had the dot-com boom and bust. Look at the way it went down. You had 2008 and the Lehman crisis. Look at what happened. You had COVID crash. Look at what happened. Yet the market is way higher than it was at the beginning of the Lehman crisis, at the beginning of even the COVID crisis, and even at the beginning of course, the dot-com bust. So the idea is remain in the market, remain in a diversified market. One stock, by the way, guys, it could have taken this journey and ended somewhere in the middle and gone bankrupt and never come back. So it has to be a basket of stocks. You have to diversify. You have to either let experts do it or just put it in an index like the Sensex. It always has the 30 top companies. The minute it's not 30 any top company, it goes out of the Sensex automatically. Your money gets invested in the next in the 30th company, which is the highest. The next page that I'll go is tell you about one of the funds we have. It's our oldest fund. It's about a little more than 24 years old. It's called the DSP Flexi Cap Fund. And the reason I'm showing this is not for any marketing reason, but to tell you that this fund has given, and I'll tell you the returns it has given after 24 years. But in the middle, it has faced the dot-com boom and bust. And that looks like a little blip if you see over 2000. Okay, it has faced 2008. What happened, which was the Lehman crisis. It's faced the COVID fall. And so, you know, this fund has gone through all kinds of badgering, you can say. Okay, and this is the blue line, by the way, guys. And it is 86 times your money if you had invested when it started 24 years ago in May 97. So in spite of all of this, your money has still gone up 86 times. If you put 1 lakh, it would have been 86 lakhs today. If you put 1 crore, it would have been 86 crores today. My point is that this blue line, which is up 86 times, is something that happens only if you have a diversified portfolio and you remain patient, and these kind of falls don't phase you. And if you invested even more in the fall, great for you, or you just stay put. Actually, you know, they did a study. Abhishek, we can get off this. They did a study in Fidelity, and the study was very interesting. In the US, they tried to look at their investors who've made the highest returns, and they wanted to call all of them. They started calling all of them. What did they find out? The guys who made the best returns had died, and probably someone had not claimed it. So this money went on compounding. Their $1 became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 6. 4 became 8, 8 became 16, 16 became 32, 32 becomes 64. So your 1 has become 64. So that is very important to remember. The other thing is the rule of 72. Please keep this in mind. The rule of 72 says that 72 divided by the rate of return that you get or expect to get will tell you the number of years you need for compounding. For doubling your money. So for example, if I have 7% as my rate of return, which is very, very, I would say, a reasonable rate to take and conservative rate, you will double your money every 10 years. Now, if you start only at the age of 40, you probably have another 4 decades to go. So your money can double 4 times. 1 will become 2, 1 will become 2, 2 will become 4, 4 will become 8, and 8 will become 16. However, if you start on the day that you were born, or your parents start for you, then, and you live, say, up to 80, then 1 becomes, the first decade, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, 16 becomes 32, 32 becomes 64, 64 becomes 128, 128 becomes 56, and help me again, 256 becomes something to live till 90. Yes. So my point is, the earlier you start, the better it is. And I'm telling you, at 7%, which is a very attainable rate today in India, given that our inflation is 5%. So when inflation is about 5%, remember, you always have to aim for a rate that's better than inflation. Otherwise, inflation is going to eat up all your money. Today, if you go leave the money in the bank, you're getting 3%. Okay, inflation is 5%. What's the point? So please make sure you always beat inflation. Even if you get 7%, you start early. There is enough time to make a lot of money. I think with that, I'm going to stop. Those are the basic principles. And I'll pass it back to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Aditi. That was a wonderful introduction to equities. Incidentally, I was thinking, Aditi, the level of compounding, the rule of 72 you were mentioning, even the Sensex has gone up to 60 times plus, which indicates the level of multifold compounding if you just stick with your horizon of expected returns and always look at it in bucket of, I would say, one cycle. So with that introduction to equities, we move to fixed income and real estate. Like I mentioned, we have Mr. Sandeep Bad, wealth of experience in fixed income. Sandeep, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. These are the 4 traditional asset classes for investing over the last 2000 years. Debt is standing out because I've been asked to cover it, and at the last moment, a bit of real estate as well. Traditionally, people have allocated their wealth over these asset classes. How much you do to each asset class depends on your own personal risk return appetite, your personal macroeconomic outlook on each of the asset classes. So, but before I explain debt, I just wanted all of you young, wonderful people to remember just 3 things. First, as Aditi partly covered, in a high nominal GDP country like India, equity will give the best returns over long periods. And Aditi, thank you for showing the graphs. And Aditi is someone I've admired for a very long time. And I think she has delivered a wonderful message that equity does give the best returns over long periods. The second thing I would like you guys to remember is a quote from the legendary Howard Marks. The best time to buy an asset class is when nobody else wants it. Remember, these 4 asset classes have been around for 2000 years. Chances are very high that they will be around for the next 50 years or so, right? Which is your investing horizon. So if somebody tells you in March 2020, boss, equities is dead, it's never going to come back, there are lockdowns, that's actually a great time to buy it. Emotionally, not so easy, very easy said on a presentation. But guys, if you can remember these 2 things, along with the third thing that I'm going to tell you, I think you will make a huge amount of money in the next 60 years. You will see ups and downs. You will see skeptics telling you this asset class is dead. It's never going to come back. If you can just have the emotional and the psychological discipline to invest, then it will be great. Intelligence is not so important. Discipline is important, right? And by the way, forget all the formulas and the theories we go through. If you just remember these 3 things, I think that itself will be a great takeaway from this session. Equities gives best returns over long periods of time. Best time to buy an asset class is when nobody else wants it. And finally, a quote from the not so legendary Sandeep Bed. Students should start investing as soon as they start earning. Doesn't matter where you invest. It's fine. I will not get into traditional, non-traditional. Because the beauty is when you start investing with your first job, you only have a small amount of money to lose. What could go wrong? Answer is very little because you have very little, right? If you make a lot of money, you will gain valuable lessons. You'll keep on your compounding journey. If you lose that money, no worries. With a small amount of loss, you would have learned a lifelong of lessons. So guys, do go and start investing because investing has to be experienced personally. Only so much can be taught by textbooks and seminars. So with these 3 big points, frankly, I'm through with 80% of what I had to share with you. But since I still have time, I'll explain a little bit of fixed income. Why fixed income, right? One is your emergency funds. You need money for emergency. Second is it's a pool of liquidity. You need liquidity for various needs, right? And fixed income gives you steady returns and can be liquidated easily. And finally, returns as well. There are times when fixed income can give you very high returns. Now, what good is a finance professional if he does not dazzle you with a few formulas? So this is my attempt at that. Basically, I think our economic students, our finance students would be familiar with this. And if you're not, do not worry. Just ignore the formula. Just remember that a bond price and interest rates have an inverse relationship. That is when interest rates go up, bond prices fall down. That's all. That's all that this slide is trying to say in the confusing language that finance people use. Now, let's look at where interest rates currently are, right? Interest rates currently are 10-year GSEC is at 6.36, which by drawing some historical charts, we are seeing that 80% of the time in the past, it's actually been higher. Plus, we are expecting higher inflation in the market due to increase in oil prices, etc., that you would be reading. What does this mean? That we actually expect interest rates to go up from now. And if interest rates go up, as we just learned, bond prices will go down. And that's why we have a negative view on long-term debt instruments. Not advocating you getting into long-term debt instruments because their price can fall when interest rates rise. But yes, you need to maintain liquidity for your emergency and other funds. Go ahead and use that for fixed income. Also remember, evaluate the credit risk. There is no such thing as a free lunch. If somebody is giving you a promised return of 20%, please evaluate it with your friends, with your well-wishers, people with experience. And by the way, you can also ask about it on the Multiply platform. It's a platform where questions are asked by our users and we answer them. This particular question is about investing in cooperative banks, and we have actually advised Yashika not to do so, invest in scheduled commercial banks. You could also be having a similar question on investing not only in fixed income, but any other asset class. Just come to our platform and ask this question. We would love to respond to you. Been also asked to cover real estate at the last moment and would like to say that real estate is coming off a long bear market cycle from 2013 to 20. And we do have a positive view, particularly on residential real estate. But remember that real estate is a very large illiquid asset. At the start of your career, you may not want to get stuck with it, but purely as an asset class, we feel positive about it for the next 5-6 years. One statistic that supports it is the incremental cost of ownership versus renting. See, all of you will need a house after you pass out, right? There's no dispute on that. There are two options. You could own it or you could rent it. Now, if you rent it, basically today the annual rental cost is roughly 3.5% of the cost of the house. If you borrow and buy it, your cost of loan will be 7%. So the incremental cost that you're paying is 3.5% per annum, which means applying the rule of 72 that Aditi told us, if your house doubles in 20 years, you would have broken even. And given that we have come off a long bear market cycle, chances are very high. Further, this incremental cost of ownership, cost of borrowing minus cost of rental is at a 10-year low. It's never been so low in the last 10 years. So there's a good chance that housing prices could appreciate over the next few years. And with that, thank you so much. And I'll hand it over back to Abhishek.
Thank you, Sandeep. This was a brilliant introduction to fixed income and real estate.
Abhishek, are you on mute?
We can't hear you, Abhishek.
No, he is not muted. Hello, Mr. Murarka. Hello, Mr. Murarka. I think he... Hello. Hello, Mr. Murarka.
Abhishek?
Mr. Murarka.
I think
he's stuck some...
Let me...
Yeah, please. Mr. Murarka. Hello. Hello, Mr. Murarka.
Yeah, I think he's coming.
He's reconnecting his audio. Yeah.
Hi, Abhishek.
Hello. I think he'll come back.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, in the interest of time, should we move on to the third speaker, and I'll stop share?
Yeah, can you just name the third speaker?
Siddharth, Mr. Siddharth.
Okay, Mr. Siddharth. Yeah.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so great to be here and really great insights from Sandeep and Aditi so far. I come from a different ecosystem. It's unprecedented, it's crypto. When we are looking at a 7% return, crypto has given a 6-digit return, right? So if you would have invested $1 in Bitcoin in 2008, it would be $67,000 today. So that's 6 lakh percent return, right? So why this is so exponential, why this ecosystem is growing so rapidly, very few know it, but it is the adoption is crazy. All right, so a recent statistics show just it came out with a number that India has around 10 million users of crypto, whereas the demat accounts in India are I think 3 or 4 crores, right? So why is that so? So I'll just give you a brief history of money, how it actually was. So money so far has always been through a third party. All right. So for example, on our 100 rupee note, there is written, I promise to pay the bearer. That means RBI is taking the guarantee to honor that 100 rupees. That is a debt instrument. Crypto, Bitcoin is a debt-free instrument because it works directly. That means I transfer you. If I transfer 1 Bitcoin to Abhishek, it goes directly without any third party. So who validates that transaction? It's the internet. In internet, there is a layer called blockchain, which validates that transaction. So you don't need to rely on a governing body like RBI or the Federal Reserve. It is peer-to-peer. And since it is peer-to-peer, it is global. Wherever there is internet, you can access your Bitcoin. So this is unprecedented because we as humans have this habit that if anything goes it goes wrong in our bank account, we want to go to the banker and say that pay me back. I made this mistake. But here you have the complete control of your money. So why this is solving a great problem? Because so far we have seen, a lot of people say why the stock market is going up, why the real estate things are going up. That is because we all have been taught that inflation is healthy, and the reason why things go up in price, not value, the price goes up because the government keeps printing money. So post 1971, when the intrinsic value thing was removed, 1 rupee was $1 was not pegged to $1 worth of gold. That when that system was removed, the government got superpowers, right? They could print how much ever money they could, right? So because there is more supply of money in the ecosystem, the prices of stocks, the prices of real estate, the prices of your FMCGs, everything goes up. Steel goes up, commodities goes up. A very clear example is in the last 2.5 years. If you guys know the M1 index, right, which is the money supply index, which tells you that how much money is in circulation. In the last 2 years, about 30% of the money in supply was printed. That is helicopter drop. This was because of COVID. Governments, the Federal Reserve printed trillions of dollars, right? So in 2018, the world economic size was around $100 trillion. Now it is $130 trillion in 2 years. What happens if you have 1 lakh rupees kept in your safe? It has lost value by 30% if you're not investing it right. So, I'll give you an example. Suppose there is an apple kept in a room. I and Abhishek have $100 each. We want to buy that apple, and suddenly my dad comes and says, take $2,000, Abhishek, take $2,000, Siddharth. What happens to the price of that apple? We are willing to pay more because the money supply has increased. So that's inflation, right? Now, if you guys are investing, you're investing in stocks or debt or whatever, watch Big Short and Margin Call. These are two movies which tell you how this ecosystem is cartel oriented, right? So these in Big Short, it is a movie about a Lehman crisis, right? So when they knew that Lehman is going bust, they decided in the night, probably 3 a.m. in the night that, before the market comes to know, let's sell whatever you have at whatever price you're getting. And the news will then break out. So entire ecosystems, when there is too much power given to one entity, one government, or few large corporations, there is serious dominance, right? So Bitcoin takes that power out from these institutions, governments, and gives it to the people, and you are at par, right? So if you are in Africa or you are in Iceland, no matter where you have, but if you have a $50 phone, a smartphone which is connected to the internet, you don't need any KYC. You can directly connect to the internet and start transacting into the traditional ecosystem. The crypto ecosystem, and that is really unprecedented. So that's what the idea about Bitcoin and crypto is all about. With all due respect to the traditional investment system, what about crypto volatility? Somebody's asking. We'll come back to that later.
We'll come to this. Tushar will have a Q&A. We'll come to this.
All right. So that's about it. I think that I can talk for hours about this, but in a nutshell, this is the problem which the crypto is solving. That it gives you the power, and it is totally transparent. There cannot be any. There is 21 million Bitcoins in supply. You can go on the blockchain, see it real time. You don't need to trust the people. You can trust the code, and it's based on math and time, which can never go wrong. So when we are doing anything, everything is, even your WhatsApp message which you forward is encrypted. You are trusting the internet for doing everything we do, right? Even this call is running through internet. So crypto is just a layer, and it enables you to do everything globally. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Siddharth. We are already seeing a lot of questions on crypto, clearly shows the direction of the winds. So we'll have a separate Q&A on crypto, on every asset class. We'll now move to the another space that is thriving very fast. We have Mr. Pranav Mahajani. I'll put a statistic that I came across. The total fundraising in the Indian startup ecosystem in 9 months is $24 billion. And the total fundraising in the decade that ended in 2020 was $53 billion. So put another way, we have seen almost half of fundraise in 9 months what we saw in the entire decade. So with that context, over to you, Pranav. Exciting times, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you, IMC, for setting this up. Absolute pleasure and honor to be here. And thank you for all the fellow panelists for setting the ground ready for me. I think we are living in very interesting times. I think the last 7-8 years, we have never, 7-8 years, we're seeing the creation of an asset class, which we've never heard of. I think it's very obvious. Just to give you some statistics and just to add to what Abhishek has given. So in 2019, I'm talking of a pre-COVID area, and 2021, which is year to date, we had 733 angel seed deals which happened. As of today, we have 869 deals which have happened today in 2021. And we have 592 VCP deals which have happened, and 500 odd have happened today in 2021. But in the angel investment was 2019, we had 600 million, and it's $1.2 billion today. And VC money has increased from 12 billion to $23 billion. So I think no asset class has seen this kind of capital flow, which is happening today. I think to my mind, it's very logical, because last 7-8 years, what technology has done for us is break the barrier of time and space. It's very easy to book Ola. It's good to go on BigBasket, make your kids study on Byju, buy on Nykaa, look at Cred, look at Policybazaar. These are names which we are using, all of us are using today. I'm sure there's nobody in this room who is not using a startup ecosystem play today. And the next logical question which comes to mind is, how can I participate? And just to add another context to it, like in 2009, we had 8 unicorns. In 2020, we had 17. And today in 10 months, we have 33 unicorns. And some of the world's largest funds are operating out of India today. What this tells me is that if I'm using these products, how can I participate in the journey? How can I be a part of the journey? And the logical thing is to buy shares, right? Again, 20 years back, 25 years back, when we started using HUL, Colgate extensively, the logical thing people did was to go out and buy, shares of HUL and Colgate, and I think they're fantastic stocks to own. But you all need to understand that angel investing or startup investing is a 0 and 1 game. Either you're a hero or you become zero. And that's how it happens. And there is no liquidity. So if you decide that I want to invest in a startup today, and after 6 months I want to exit, the probability of you exiting is zero, because unless there is a buyer to what you're trying to do, and if it's a great company, it's fine. So out of for the every Nykaa you hear, I'm sure there are hundreds of other people who have tried what Nykaa is trying to do. So it actually becomes very tricky to invest. So I think just the way Aditi was saying that investing in stocks directly is extremely risky, because you really, out of the whole universe, the haystack, you're picking up one needle and saying, okay, I'll go with this guy, or I'll go with this management. That makes it very complicated. And that's where the angel platforms have come into existence. If you look at Let's Venture as a platform, there are many other platforms in the country today who are as successful as Let's Venture. There are 10,000 investors on our platform. And at the same time, there are people like you and me, people who are wanting to invest in the startup universe. I'll give you a real life example. There's a gentleman called Anupam Mittal, who is the founder of Shaadi.com. He's a good friend of mine. And Anupam is a legendary investor now, because he has probably 100 companies in his portfolio. He's advising, mentoring companies. And he has a syndicate. People follow what he's trying to do. Just the way you pick up a stock which Warren Buffett has picked up or Rakesh Jhunjhunwala has picked up. Similarly, we are seeing such trends happening also in the startup universe. And I think that's where people are replicating what these guys are doing. So if Anupam is leading a round and saying, okay, there's $10 million round, I'm putting in $1 million, a lot of people will come together and will fill up the $9 million. What I would really like to say that the startup universe is evolving very fast. It's largely led by very large VCP. And another new asset and another new player which we are seeing is family offices. You'd be surprised that we have 600 family offices today, whose probably average net worth should be 1,000 odd crores today. They have now started looking at, just to add to what Siddharth was saying, to crypto and to angel investing. Like today, Morgan Stanley is saying that globally crypto should be probably 5% of your portfolio. Why will you not have it here in India? At the same time, either you invest in crypto, you invest in angel investing. See, it's all a 0-1 game for us. The question which probably Abhishek, which we were discussing yesterday, is it risky? Extremely risky. Is it for the big boys? Answer is no, because I've seen a lot of big boys with a lot of money go down the drain because they just don't know the ecosystem. And I hear that there are a lot of students out here. I think one thing which I would like to tell you guys is, I respect companies like, Infosys, Tata, and fantastic companies. But if you want to really start early in your career and do something different, join a startup. Your real money will be made in ESOPs. Your real money, your real learning will come when you join a small company and trying to do many things. And I think that is your biggest investment, what you can do when you're early on, because you might not be able to participate in startup investing because your net worth criteria might be not there. You have 10 lakh rupees to invest, suppose. It's always good to invest in, as everybody said, in equity. That is one. Debt instrument number two. The more riskier crypto, and the most riskiest, the angel investing. So I think, but it's good to, but it's also good to participate with people whom like if you are from IIT, IIM, and people who are coming out with the startup, if you love them, you like them, you trust them, you can write a small check. But I think it's evolving as we speak, and I think it's a matter of time that this will become one of the largest asset classes in the country today. It's good to see a Zomato list. It's good to see, Nykaa, which is just born in front of us and go to the browsers. So I think we are in very interesting times, and happy to take questions and explore more.
Sure. Thank you, Pranav. So the thought here is now we'll have few questions for the panel members, and then we'll open the stage for audience to ask questions. Pranav, since you're already live, I have a question for you. There's a lot of interest with many new age companies coming for IPO. Some of the names you mentioned, and
Yes.
one major, I would say, a disconnect between a traditional investor and new investors is the loss versus a profit nature. Many of these companies are seeking a valuation in billions of dollars, but they're still making losses and there's no clear visibility when will they break even. So how do you see this applies to all of us as investors? What is your advice on how should one approach these kind of companies?
See, in the startup universe, the biggest moat which nobody talks about actually is capital. If you're backed by Tiger, if you're backed by Sequoia, if you're backed by SoftBank, and they take you to the next level, there is no way on earth a smaller startup can compete with you. So I think that we need to understand predominantly. If today Zomato is probably at last I checked was 1,40,000 crore market cap, is it expensive? I don't know. But will it take that much money to create Zomato? You might not be able to create another Zomato. You might not be able to create another Swiggy. You might not be able to create another Paytm. These or a Byju. Byju is a classic textbook example. I love to share Byju's example. Byju is not an Indian company anymore. It's owned more by foreigners. It's across the world operations, left, right, center. They acquire companies. It's become a global education conglomerate. What will it take you to break that? Nothing. You cannot break it. So let's leave them aside and let's do something else. So every time a founder comes to me and say, I have a model which is a little different than Byju. They have these 3 plugs and I can fix it and I can make it a unicorn. We say, dude, what are you talking? You can't do that. The moment he sees you doing that, he will buy you. Right? So these companies need to be valued very differently. They cannot be valued in the traditional P price to book, earning multiples. We can't do all that, So, and that makes it very risky. So when I started looking at the pre-IPO list, and I was, probably, Aditi can add more value to it. I was surprised to see a lot of traditional mutual funds, the who's who, the Prashant Jains of the world and S. Narens of the world writing checks. And I think, wow, these guys are textbook value investors. And I think Sandeep was talking about Howard Marks, and there's a very beautiful article where he talks about value and growth in one of his memos. Very interesting to read. These are not value stocks, they're great growth stocks. Amazon for decades never made money, but it's Amazon today, right? They're not startups anymore, they're giants. So we will have to trust the founder and understand that at some point of time, they will make capital, they will make value. Do I think that everybody will be able to be profitable? No. Some of them will be, and they will become the next Reliance, the next startups, for us to look at. But many of them will fail. And many of them are actually babies of the bull run,
So that's very helpful, and I agree with the perspective on the future is the market right now is valuing growth much more than pure value. Sandeep alluded to this in his examples on interest rate. If the interest rates are low, it simply means the cash flow that you earn now versus the one you earn 10 years down the line, the bridge has reduced. You have a lower discounting rate on that. So you would suggest that people should have some exposure to some of these new age companies,
absolutely,
depending on their comfort.
It's a no-brainer. Some allocation should be there.
Got it.
This is probably a substitute of you doing angel investing. That's how I would look at it. Because if you're young, you don't have the capital, then you can buy a Nykaa, you can buy a Policybazaar or Zomato.
Got it. So that's very helpful, Pranav. I'll move to Siddharth. Siddharth, some very interesting questions for you. First, something very interesting I read a couple of days back. There's a report that says the number of crypto investors in India is over 10 CR. And we know the numbers of equity investors is much smaller than that. Equity as an asset class has been here for decades. Crypto in itself is a decade old. And I would say the real proliferation in India has happened in the last, even more than the last 2 years, I think, since the onset of the pandemic. So I'll tell you my personal view here is everyone who has a reach has jumped on the bandwagon, become an influencer into crypto. The names I'm alluding, comedians, experts, and non-experts, everyone is now talking of crypto. There's also a thought that the total number of coins is over 7,000. And since you do an audit of coins, I want to hear 2 things from you. One is bubble or a real structural growth thought from you. And second is how should an investor in crypto should they stay with the heavyweights? You mentioned Bitcoin a lot. There's a lot of interest in Ethereum, Solana, a few other currencies, and there's a long tail. So these two questions are for you: bubble or structural, and how should one think? Where should they take exposure? You can also add how to take exposure. People would love to know that.
Okay, so the reason why there are so many people getting into the crypto space is because, especially in India, it is our population is 50% of the population is less than the age of 35. So people of our age, they understand tech better than the traditional investment companies, which are led by people over 50. So for us, we understand that behind a password we can access a bank account, even though it's the same thing. If when you are doing a 10 crore transaction, you're not doing a physical 10 crore transaction, right? You are doing just transferring the numbers. So behind a password there can be value, and we millennials and people under the age of 35, they understand it faster. And crypto has no minimum caps. You can even buy for $100. So that gives a very big exposure and an opportunity for young investors to get in. So that's one of the reasons why the number is so high. We do audit based on the legal, tech, financials, and the due diligence of the team. Something similar to what a traditional VC would do, right? Like Pranav and all these guys, they would know how they do a due diligence before making an investment. But when it comes to crypto, so it's not that you see the order book or you see the P ratios and all those things and estimate what is the value of this company. Here the parameters are different. You have to see the transaction speed, transaction fee, number of addresses, number of users, what is the block time, and the parameters are completely unprecedented. So we have 150 parameters. We use more than 3,000 data points to generate a report, and we have a patent for it in India, and we have a PCT file. So basically what happens is when okay, so that is on. And you said about the exposure, there are 7,000 coins. So when something is shooting up, right, even in the internet era in the 1990s, about 97% of the companies failed, okay, in a span of 2.5 years. So crypto is something similar. A lot of projects in crypto will fail, but not because of the technology, but because of the user trust. So cryptos basically work on Metcalfe's law of telecommunication. If you have a mobile phone and you are the only one having mobile phone in the room or in the world, you cannot make calls to anyone. But if everybody in the world has a mobile phone, the value of your phone goes up, because now you can technically call everybody, right? So that's Metcalfe's law of communication, which gives value to a project. In crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, these are the highest, the most number of users and wallet addresses are with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the top blue chips, I would say, to make it easy, to understand. So these projects have the maximum users, and they are the safest to stick with. Even though there are a lot of new projects coming in with better technologies, but their user base is not that big. So the trust level is still, very few people control those coins. So it's better to, when you are new, you start with the blue chips, and later on, as you understand how the ecosystem works, you can expand. Then it becomes like startup investment, right? There are new projects coming in, there are new IEOs, IDOs, DeFi. You can go ahead and bid in that.
Got it. Siddharth, any thoughts on regulation? Particularly in India, we see a lot of back and forth. One day it seems the government is favoring it, the other day we see something else. So if somebody, and that's a very fair point, we would want to reiterate, if somebody is entering new, it is always better to stay with the bellwether kind of coins. Any thought on is this something that should worry an investor?
Not at all. So see, regulations, since when there are 10 crore users in India, you cannot just come out and ban it, right? China has announced a ban. but still 30% of the traffic is from China. So the thing is, the reason why Bitcoin was created was to be a rule without rulers, right? They Satoshi Nakamoto created it so that nobody can ban it, right? It gives you power, true power in your pocket. So even if India bans it, there will still be users. So banning is not even an option. You cannot ban Bitcoin because it is already regulated by a code. It's by its own protocol. What can be done is the use of Bitcoin. If you are doing a payment, how do you show it in your books? How can you pay GST? How can you show your investments? What would be the capital gain tax? All those things can be regulated, but Bitcoin itself cannot be regulated. You can't ban it. It is nothing to worry about. A lot of investors, I've pitched to a lot of companies in the past, and they're like, no, this space is unregulated. We cannot invest. That shouldn't be the way we should look at this space. This is the internet ecosystem. In 1990s, a lot of developers and smart minds went to the Silicon Valley. They settled over there. This is the second opportunity for India to be at the forefront. So you shouldn't look at it as if it's something illicit, right? It's totally fine. The top 10 world's bankers, investment banks, they are all getting into crypto. ETF got listed. It's fine, right? It's not something with a taboo. So you can definitely get into it and not to worry about it.
Sure, Siddharth. We are now running short on time. So what we'll do is just couple of common question to Aditi and Sandeep, because invariably I've seen bond rates and earning yield be two main levers that causes interplay of liquidity between equity and bonds. So with that thought, there is a context that Fed is now talking of a taper increasing the interest rate. Any thought? Maybe Sandeep, you can take this one. Like, how should one think of the entire risk coming from interest rate going up?
So, investors think of allocating their money or between, say, equity and debt. So guys, let's imagine that you are a fund manager sitting in New York, investing billions of dollars for the next 10 years. What's your options? One, if you go for fixed income, the 10-year US government bond yield is 1.6%, which means over 10 years, you can hope with compounding to earn an absolute return of 18%. Sounds a bit low, doesn't it? You say, okay, let me go and buy equity. At least I'm sure I'll make 18% in equity. By the way, that's exactly what's happening in the last 18 months. Because bond yields are low, flows are moving to equity and equity prices are going up. The big risk to the market is if interest rates go up, right? Then let's say the interest rates become 10-year interest rates in the US becomes 2.6%. Fund manager in the US will say, oh, over 10 years, I can make 30% absolute return in US bonds. Well, that's much more. So why not shift some money from equity to debt? And lo and behold, the equity prices start falling down as people start selling equity. So that's a relationship that has prevailed. It's been a big driver of equity valuation markets over the last 10 years. But by the way, it's not certain if interest rates are going up in a hurry. There's been a lot of debate on whether inflation is back or not back. In the last 15 years, despite this massive amount of money being printed globally, inflation has not really gone up because technology has bringing down the cost of living. Yes, there's been asset inflation, shares are going up, real estate are going up, but cost of living has not really gone up. And unless inflation goes up, I do not see central banks increasing interest rates. Who wants to pop the party?
Thank you, Sandeep. Sandeep, this brings a question that I have for all the panel members. We are covering traditional asset classes and new ones, and the kind of risk profile also matters a lot. So there can be no one single answer to what is the right allocation in these asset classes. I'm sure Siddharth would be more skewed on crypto and versus maybe Aditi or Sandeep. So I just wanted to have a quick rapid fire, and this is open now for all of us. To all the panel members, what is your current asset allocation across the asset classes we have discussed? Maybe Siddharth, you can go first.
I am 100% crypto. I don't have any equity.
Wow.
But yes, I did invest in a couple of startups in the last 2 months because they were like really good. But I have zero equity. I don't have a demat account.
So just a quick follow-up question. Who should not invest in crypto? Because this is very important. Who should not?
I think everyone should, because consider it as buying an insurance, right? You should have at least 5% of your portfolio in crypto, and consider you're buying an insurance.
Thank you,
That
Siddharth.
should be the approach.
Thanks. Over to Aditi. Aditi.
I have, I would say, so I'm not allowed to invest in direct equity. And we have a holding company, a family office, which has about 6% in startups. We have no crypto, zero. And personally, I have about 60 in equity and 40 in fixed income. Keep it simple. And that's what I believe in. And I have to say, though, there is no shoulds in life, period. You should invest in equity and you should invest in there and you must invest in crypto and you have to invest in startups. There's no shoulds in life. It's according to your risk profile. My risk profile says, when you go through my risk profile, and there are two parts to risk profiling. One is the risk tolerance, and one is the risk-taking ability. If you're a high net worth individual, usually your risk-taking ability is high, which means if your income is high, your dependents are low, you are still young at age, all of that tells you risk-taking ability is high. So I would think all of us relatively have a higher risk-taking ability. Then comes risk tolerance. Will you freak out if the market goes down 20%? If you are all in cryptocurrency and you go down 50%, crypto is very volatile, say, and it goes down 80%, will you be chilled out about it? Will anything happen to you? Will you be anxious? Do you have enough money in the bank? Otherwise, for your life to go on. So this is your risk tolerance. And some people even have enough money in the bank, but they just get very anxious when they lose money. So accordingly, you have to diversify and you need to know where to put your money. If they're really very, very anxious, maybe they can't deal with startups. Maybe they certainly can't deal with crypto. They sometimes can't deal with enough equity.
Thank you.
So
Point fairly taken, Aditi.
So there are no shoulds. Yeah. So that's all I'm saying.
No, this is something I reiterate. There should be no shoulds. Everyone has to, and going back to what Sandeep said, start early. If you're a student, the best time to invest is the day you start earning. Go and experiment. There's an analogy that we use also is over time you figure out what should be your starter, what should be your main course, and what should be your dessert. And maybe I would just leave it at that for one to understand what can be your dessert and what can be your main course. I'll move to Sandeep. Sandeep, your asset allocation, any thoughts?
I follow a simple principle. I invest only in what I understand. And since I do not understand crypto, I haven't invested. But just to make sure I don't miss the bus, I have promised to myself, I will invest in crypto the day I can pay my taxes in crypto. I'm still waiting. Hopefully it will happen one day. I don't know. But about
any thought is that coming anytime soon?
I don't know, as I said, right? And it's fine. I'm just sticking to what I understand. But by the way, this is not something that our listeners necessarily need to do. They can experiment. They are young. You invest a few ₹100 here and there. You will learn. It's a tuition. It's a tuition fees you are paying to the markets. So go ahead. About my own equity allocation, frankly, it's public on our Multipie website. And I'll just actually put it on. This is my equity allocation. It's not only is it public, it's authentic because it's directly picked up from my brokers and mutual funds. I have not put it manually. Obviously, you can see only percentages, not absolute values. And currently, thanks to the bull run, the equity allocation is 86%. Debt is also there for liquidity, any emergency needs, and it's 14%. And yes, Abhishek, if you're okay, I'll just take 1 second to add here that if any of the participants here would like to know a little bit more about Multipie, they can join the waitlist at our website. But yes, this is my publicly declared third-party asset allocation, could not get any more authentic.
Well, thank you, Sandeep. Over to Pranav. Pranav,
So I have 40% in Indian equities, 10% in US equities. I have a bit of Bitcoin, 25% in startups, and whatever else is in cash and debt.
Wow. That's really helpful. So guys, we see that the allocation scales are varying on this panel, which also shows that everyone can have own different risk profile and invest in things you understand is something I would leave to the audience. Before I open the panel now to audience, just one last question, and this need not be answered by everyone. Many students are here. Any advice to your 20-year-old self, mistakes, what not to do, any thoughts?
I'll take it in a nutshell. I passed out from IIM Calcutta at the age of 23, 1999, height of .com boom. I forget all the textbooks, DCF that I've learned in campus, go ahead and invest my salary for the first 1 year. Immediately I lose all my savings in 1 year, I lose 50,000 rupees. But boss, would I change it? Never. The lessons I learned have held me in good stead for the rest of my life. So I would not change anything, even though I lost.
Thank you, Sandeep. I think we should now open the panel to audience questions. So are we taking questions from the comments or are we unmuting the audience?
Yeah, we'll unmute the audience. There is Mr. Tushar Arora. Please keep your questions crisp and clear so that we don't lose out on time. Yeah, Mr. Tushar Arora, please unmute yourselves.
I just wanted to ask that me as a retail investor, I have an account in Zerodha. And should I invest in the very risky classes like future and options? Because like you people are finance professionals, you have seen that there is a very expensive hardware, a huge technical and fundamental analysis to invest in future and options. So do you think a retail investor is well equipped to invest in future and options?
Okay. Is this question for any particular panel member? Either Aditi or Sandeep can take this one.
Aditi, would you like to? Aditi is on mute, I think.
Aditi,
Yeah.
Aditi, please unmute.
Hi. So when it comes to futures and options, it is even more volatile than the equity stock market. So if you don't mind losing money, you could make a lot of money. But if you can stomach losing about 40, 50, 80% also of your money, because there can be a small chance of that also, then go ahead and do it. And my advice would be put some of your money, if you must do it, I don't do it, but if you must do it, put a little bit of your money in that just for some fun and to learn more. But I would not put all your money. I wouldn't put a substantial portion of your money in something that's so volatile. Unless, of course, you have tons of money and you want to play around with some money, then that's your problem. So your ability to take risk is high. If your tolerance is really high, which means you really don't mind losing 80%, put it in. It's okay. It's up to you.
Thank you, Aditi. Tushar, I'll also add some thoughts because I have personal experience. I am active on Twitter. I see a lot of debates around this. My simple rule book is if you don't know what are option Greeks, if you can't explain option Greeks to yourself, you're not ready to invest anything more than 5% in FNO. Aditi mentioned of volatility. You should also factor that, say crypto is volatile, but doesn't go to zero, it bounces back. FNO is time bound, there is time decay, and if you go to zero, you can't bounce back. That's a very major risk, and it's a terrain that I would say first ask why. Why do you want to do FNO? If you have a clear answer for why do you want to do FNO, then go ahead and try it, but don't try it for all your capital. That's a thought here. Any other question?
There's nobody who's raised their hands. So, and the chat also, I think everything. Okay, 1 minute. Mr. Shardul Shah.
Question from what?
Yeah, Mr. Shardul. Yeah, Mr. Shah.
Yeah, Abhishek, you wanted to speak something? Otherwise, we can.
No, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think we had an excellent panel discussion today, and we must thank all our speakers at the outset. Respected President of IMC, respected Chairperson of YLF, Ms. Vidhi Doshi, respected all the other executive committee members of YLF, all the executives of IMC, Anita ji, Sheetal ji, all the other senior members of IMC, respected all the dignitaries who have been speakers, and also our anchor Abhishek. At the outset, good afternoon to all of you, and I would also like to thank each one of you personally. And it is a great privilege to have all of you for this first meeting of YLF under the leadership of Vidhi, a very, very dynamic personality. And I'm sure all of us have learned a lot. Starting with Aditi, I think Aditi spoke very well on equity, and I must really thank her for sparing her valuable time out of the busy schedule. I know there was a family wedding. In spite of that, she's been able to spare her time. I would also like to thank Siddharth, Pranav, thank you so much that in spite of Nimesh not being around, you have able to spare your valuable time. And please thank also Nimesh on behalf of IMC. I would like to thank Sandeep and Abhishek both. Sandeep, just to let you know, Mihir is my very dear personal friend, who is also the co-founder of Multiply, and I know Abhishek and Sandeep both are working under him, and I know the kind of people he mentors and he has under them. So thank you so much, Abhishek, for anchoring this wonderful program. Thank you, Sandeep, for sparing your valuable time and speaking on fixed income. Last but not the least, once again, thanks to all the audience who have been excellent people around and listening to all of us. And on behalf of IMC and Young Leaders Forum, it is my privilege to propose this vote of thanks at the end of this very interesting initiative. And it was very, very knowledgeable, discussion on various aspects. And as Siddharth rightly mentioned about crypto, one of my, I was working at Nishit Desai Associates, and one of the persons who keeps talking about crypto is Nishit Bhai. But believe me, friends, I have yet not dared to invest in that. But whenever I meet Nishit Bhai, the first thing and only thing he talks is crypto. But yes, nevertheless, as rightly discussed with all the panelists, I think we have learned a lot by all the asset classes. I must thank all of you for giving time out, and I request all of you to kindly carry out this vote of thanks with a round of applause to all the people, including the speakers. And once again, thanks to all of you, and have a wonderful time, and thanks for contributing toward the success of this event. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.